In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, hello. Naka-live na ba? Ayan,
Yes, we're live na.
parang podcast. Pa siya live sa akin, but hello, Miss Guri. Ba't ka naka-off ng mic?
Ay po, yeah. Hello.
Yan.
Magsa-start na tayo?
Hello sa mga nasa live chat. No, not yet. Magbabasa muna tayong live chat.
Oo.
Hello sa mga nasa live chat sa YouTube. Hello.
Hi,
Hi.
hi Chambi. Hi Miss Cha. Hi Miss Davao Conyo Official. Hi
Hi, Miss
Carabelio, Artie
Philip.
Toledo. Oo.
Hi. Oo, may ikakasal. JS Prom. Mag-start tayo in a while. Maghihintay lang tayo ng people. Pati sa Zoom. Hello, guys.
Hi Miss J Supremacy. Hanap gulo.
Bardago. Let's go, Barda.
Good evening
Barda
din
Princess.
po. Decan Las de Santos. Anak ni ano? Anak ni Elijah. Ricalin, hi! Nandito na yung BettyLynn official fan club. Mag-ingay kayo, guys.
Hi,
Hello
Ma'am
din, Miss
Rems.
Ricalin.
Hi, Marvin.
Pa-shoutout na po, Iana's Cookies official fan club. Thank you for helping us with this event. Love you guys.
Hello, good morning. Tweet with us using the hashtag PND Spectrum Check. Tari, may pa-hashtag.
Ang ingay ng nanay ko.
Ano?
Oh my gosh.
Ang ingay ng kapatid ko, narinig ko. Oh my God.
Sabi,
May nagbebenta po ba ng Spotify Premium? Netflix din. Sana may magbenta.
ay bongga, love story.
Aww. We were both young. Dun, 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 dun. Jabberwockies.
Jabberwockies.
Ano daw?
Hello guys. Mag-start tayo. Mag-start tayo in 3 minutes. Hi, Craig. Akala ko Sogie discussion online JS prom pala.
Tota. Sample naman, Miss Buri. Anong sample ko?
River.
River.
Pasulong paharap.
Gusto nyo,
Tumulong
Bisaya
paharap.
version.
Sige, gingham check nga dyan.
Hindi nga. Ay, hindi ko pa na-translate.
Hello sa mga first dance na daw sabi ni Kyla Magdale.
Magdale. Ang slangers naman.
Sorry. Akala ko Riverdale eh.
Hi, good evening, Miss M. Joy Espinosa.
Yes. Welcome back to me, welcome back to you, and welcome back to us.
May as ba?
Wala flat. Sumulong paharap.
Hi, Adrianna Nation. Good evening.
Shoutout daw sa BettyLynn OFC, sabi ni Rogs. Hello.
Hello mga BettyLynn.
Pamay na lang po. Charms.
Okay. So ito po yung rules for the Zoom meeting. Again, please change your name to your Twitter handle or your nickname screen name. Put your microphone on mute when questions are being asked and while the talk is ongoing. You may choose to turn off or on your camera. And for questions regarding the talk, you may send your questions to @ice_4questions. Yun lang.
Yes. And para makitweet kayo with us using the hashtag PNB Spectrum Check. Try nyo lang doon. Mag-tweet kayo ng questions or like suggestions or bash nyo kami ni Miss Buri kung gusto nyo.
May bash talaga. Papuri.
Mm-mm.
Gusto niyang
Papuri sa Diyos. Remix?
Hindi ko yan alam. Hindi ako Catholic. Chat.
Same. Yan, nasa na daw yung buffet. Bawal mag-buffet. Social distancing.
Sabi ni Carl Andrew _3, i-bash na yan si Buri. Sige, i-bash niyo ako. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but...
Ano?
I'm still
Tuloy
pretty.
mo.
Hindi ko na alam.
Kaya pala may dot.
Hindi ko na alam yung kasunod.
Tara, inom na tayo. Gin at
But chains and whips excite me.
Paksindihan na po ang gin. Hello sa 78 viewers.
Time check, 8:06
Simula pa lang
na.
tayo. Ay, 8:06 na.
So
Game.
magsimula na tayo, guys.
Yes.
Isang.
Let's go. Welcome back to you and welcome back to us.
Mm-mm.
Go, Miss Buri.
So good evening, everyone. Good evening, guys, and good evening to you, Miss Miggy. How are we feeling tonight?
I'm feeling fabulous. Wow, good evening, Miss Buri, and good evening to the people who are with us right now in the Zoom teleconference, and also to the people who are tuned in on our YouTube live stream via the Pearl Next Door support team's YouTube channel. I am one of your hosts, Miggy at Don Bang Bang.
And I am Matsui Burina at Gavin Tanduay on Twitter, and we are your beautiful hosts for tonight's event.
Sana all beautiful. Magandang gabi. Oo. During this lockdown, quarantine, and this pandemic, every one of us was forced to stay at home. Everything turned online. Online classes, tapos we have to work from home, tapos kahit yung pakipagkita with our friends, naging online na lang, ang hirap-hirap. All things went virtual na.
That's right. Even though everything na is on virtual platform, online shows has kept us together. And most of us got to know each other on Twitter and formed a bond because of our love for Adrianna Rachel Coates, Iana Bernardes, Philip Hernandez, Ron Macapagal, Jamie Catanyag, and of course, our beloved series, Pearl Next Door.
True Musburi. True Miss Buri. Pearl Next Door is a girls' love series, and it's one of the first, if not the very first, GL in the Philippines and the entire world that the focal point of the show is on sapphic love.
It opened a lot of topics and sparked discussions within and also outside the fandom as it tackles the topic of bisexuality, sapphic culture, specifically on sapphic dating.
Totoo yan. Tapos, oftentimes pa nga, the bisexuals are being forgotten, erased, invalidated, and such in the community. Kaya ganun yung title ng event natin. Spectrum Check, the Vanishing B in the LGBTQIA+. The show did well on bi-visibility, showing the real-life struggles of bisexuals. Thankful for the Pearl Next Door, we now see a representation on the media that unfortunately hindi pa rin ganun karami ngayon. Pero it's a start.
Yeah. So as a response to the discussions, to the topics that were discussed on the show, we organized the Sogie talk so we can be more enlightened and we get to know more about these topics. So we are reminding everyone during or after the talk, you can send your questions via Zoom chat or via live stream chat box on YouTube or tweet us your questions with the hashtag PND Spectrum Check that will be answered later on the second part of the event.
Yes, and now we are officially thanking and welcoming everyone as the PND support team, Rachel Coates, Adrianna Nation, Iana's Cookies, MacaPhillip OFC, Gameboys PH, Thirdwheels OFC, and BettyLynn OFC present Spectrum Check, the Vanishing B in the LGBTQIA+.
So for us to be more enlightened about Sogie, or in general, and bisexuality, we invited a speaker from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, Babaylan. She is an education committee head in UPLB Babaylan, the spokesperson of the Youth Unbound Southern Tagalog, And she's also the Assistant Secretary General of Gabriela, University of the Philippines, Los Baños chapter. So from UPLB Babaylan, please welcome Miss Kristine San Agustin.
Hello po everyone. Thank you for organizing this discussion, and it's really great to see like a fans club na ma-inspire from a show to actually learn more about the community. So thank you so much for inviting us over to talk about Sogie in general, and later on we are gonna discuss more about bisexuality and debunking some stereotypes and misconceptions about bisexuality. So let's begin. Ayon. Okay, so again, welcome to Soji 101. Sige, or sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. Sige po, next slide. So just an overview of the things that we are going to talk about today and learning objectives na rin at the end of this discussion. By the end of this, we're going to have a short introduction. Then by the end of this discussion, we should be able to differentiate what sex and what gender is, and define both. Then by the end of discussion, it's also important that we can define and differentiate the components of Soji. And then we'll go over to discussing gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation, or SOGI. Ayon. We're also gonna talk about the importance of SOGI, especially for the community and in policy making in general. Sige, next po. By the way, before I progress through the discussion, can you guys hear me clearly? Baka lang medyo mahina or something. Ayan.
We
Just
hear you
so
loud and
po.
clear.
We can hear you po.
Ayun.
Opo.
Thank you, Ayan. Thank you. Okay, so for the introduction, trigger warning na lang for those who are watching. We might encounter the mention of transphobia, murder, violence, and sexual harassment. I know you're familiar with Jennifer Laude and what happened to Jennifer, but just to reiterate, what happened. Jennifer was brutally murdered by a U.S. Army, Joseph Scott Pemberton, last 2014, October 11. Ang sabi ni Pemberton, ginawa niya yon na patayin si Jennifer is because of self-defense. And if you didn't know, actually, legal reasoning yung trans panic defense na kapag daw na-shock ka ng gender identity ng isang person o ng isang trans person, it's legal and it's reasonable to kill them because you found out that they're trans. And just recently, Pemberton was given a pardon on the basis of GCTA. So GCTA is Good Conduct Time Allowance. So basically, sabi nila, binibigyan ng pardon si Pemberton because meron siyang good conduct inside the prison, which is questionable because in the first place, Pemberton is protected by VFA, or the Visiting Forces Agreement, which protects the U.S. Army in the Philippines. Agreement siya between the Philippines and the U.S. Tapos nagkakaroon yung free pass yung mga U.S. Army to step on our basic human rights, especially to our trans sisters. And then later on, Pemberton was freed. Like nothing ever happened. So si Pemberton ngayon ay nakabalik na sa US na parang wala lang nangyari. So latest news about this is nung nagbigay ng statement si Roque na they did that just so we can get help from the US to get vaccines, no? Treating Jennifer Laude as what? A sacrificial lamb, and as like an excuse for their incompetence. Ayun. So, you know what they say na people often hate what they don't understand, and that's a very apparent issue that's very apparent in the LGBTQ plus community, because every day there are victims of violent actions and ignorant violence. Sige, next. this is Heart Pontanes. Siguro hindi familiar ang marami kasi hindi ito resurface sa media ng sobra-sobra. Like, konti lang siguro yung news outlets na nagbalita tungkol dito. Heart Pontanes was violently killed by stabbing noong 2019, May 6. Ayun, somewhere in May 2019 by 2 men. Ang masahol pa dito is yung ginawang pagpatay is ni-record ng dalawang lalaki na tila katawa-tawa yung krimen at yung pagkamatay ni Hart. Sige, next. Okay, so this is Jessa Remiendo. Jessa was founded by the sea noong September 17. Nag-outing sila with friends. Tapos lumabas lang siya saglit to buy something. Tapos nung natagpuan siya, halos hindi na siya makilala kasi sobrang brutal nung ginawang pagpatay sa kanya. Although sumuko yung mga gumawa nun sa kanya, alam niyo, napakalaking bahala yung iniwan nun sa ating komunidad, sa mga trans women. Kasi patuloy tayong nababahala, natatakot tayo na baka paglabas natin, hindi na tayo makakauwi. O alam niyo, yung simpleng paglakad sa labas ay hindi safe para sa ating lahat. Ayun. Sige, next slide. Okay, so eto si Donna Niera. Ito recent lang, last year, September. Si Donna ay nakitang palutang-lutang ang bangkay sa ilog. Tapos hanggang ngayon, hindi pa rin alam yung sanhi ng pagkamatay niya. Tapos walang balita kung nasimulan ba yung investigasyon, kung may progress ba ito o natapos na ba ito kasi hindi na ulit nag-resurface yung balita tungkol sa kanya. Sige, next. Okay, so si RR, Erica, and Nicole, ito yung latest na balita tungkol sa pagpatay sa mga member ng LGBTQ+. So, RR, Erica, and Nicole were abducted last December 19 of last year. So, very recent. Pero news about it only circulated this month, ngayong January lang. Tapos isang media outlet lang yung nagbalita tungkol dito. Tapos nabalitaan na lang last January 13 na RR, Erica, and Nicole are confirmed dead, and there are still no reports nor updates about the investigation. Sige, next. Pride 20, iba naman yung karahasan na naranasan nila. If you can remember, last June, Pride 20 held a peaceful protest sa Mendiola. They followed lahat ng protocols, distancing, masks, protective gears, but they were illegally arrested by the police, and 20 of them were illegally detained, and some even experienced sexual harassment. Dahil sa patuloy na pag-iingay at paglaban, nabasura naman yung mga agawa-gawang kaso laban sa kanila. Sige, next. Ayan. Sabi dyan, Soto says Sogie bill has no chance of passing Senate. Alam na natin yan, no, na yung Sogie Equality Bill, it was first filed in 2000. Pero hanggang ngayon, hindi pa rin siya na ipapasa. Hanggang ngayon ay ipinaglalaban pa rin siya, no, sa Senate. Yung pinakamalayong narating ng bill ay noong 2017, I think, nung dumating siya sa House of Representatives, tapos naipasa siya sa hearing doon. Pero when it was brought to the Senate, nireject siya because of the basis of immorality daw. Tapos this year, nag-start ulit yung hearing. Tapos, we still have a long way to go. That is why we need all the help that we can para mapaingay yung pagpapapasa sa Sogie Equality Bill. So, you guys might be wondering, why are we starting off with these stories? Why are we starting getting to know their names and what happened to them, because it's important that we know their stories and to remember that they are more than just names. They're more than just a part of the growing statistics ng mga LGBTQ plus na pinagsasamantalahan at inaabuso. And everyday LGBTQ plus individuals are continuously abused. And the saddest thing is that we never get to see that in mainstream media and no one ever talks about it. So, ang nangyayari, their lives seem to be just, nothing. The LGBTQ plus people are so misunderstood that our very existence is considered to be offensive enough to forfeit our basic human rights. That is why it is only through proper Sogie education that we truly understand the specific characteristics and the struggles of the LGBTQ plus people. At katulad din ng sinabi ko kanina, we need all the help that we can para mapaingay lalo yung anti-discrimination bill or yung Sogie bill. Kasi this is the first bill to define Sogie and Sogie-related hate crimes. So it's very urgent. So at the end of this lecture, I really hope that maging challenge para sa lahat na mas matuto pa about the community and to continue to educate ourselves and others as well. And of course, to remember why we do this kind of discussions and to whom we do this for. So, sige, next slide. Okay, so sige, next. So that's about it for our short intro. And we're now moving on to defining what sex is. So sex basically is, before I proceed, do you have any questions, clarifications, or manifestations? Everything is welcome. Baka may hindi clear that we can answer before we move on. Kung wala naman, I guess we can proceed. So, sex. So, sex is a biological category that may be distinguished through chromosomes, through hormones, genes, reproductive organs, and the likes. Did you know that sa recent studies, ang sabi nila, instead of being born, sorry sa aso, instead of being born strictly female or strictly male, we are all in fact born in varying degrees. Can be a combination of both. And all of us are made up of genetically distinct cells that may not always, match the sex ng the rest of our body. So with that, mas pinapatunayan lang na sex is like gender can be fluid, and that is made more apparent kasi number one, a person can undergo a changing of sex characteristics and or anatomy through hormone therapy or surgery. And second, the body is known to naturally make these changes independent of human intervention. So these changes can happen even without hormone therapy or surgery. I'm gonna send a link that's really interesting to read. Ayan. Yun yung sinasabi kong study na all of us are not really like 100% female or male biologically. It's so interesting. Ayon. And then, this has been made more apparent yung fluidity ng sex, and this is most obvious, of course, with intersex individuals. Sige po, next slide. Okay. So, intersex is an umbrella term that covers a wide range of spectrum. Intersex refers to people whose physical and or chromosomal features do not fit the typical definitions of a male or female. Some intersex traits can be noticed at birth, pero some of those traits hindi siya nanonotice until puberty or even later in their life. Tapos, it's not really as rare as we think it is. Kasi according to researches, 1 in 100 people possess some form of intersex condition. Tapos it's important to note now we don't use the term hermaphrodite anymore. It's considered to be outdated and offensive. Ayun. So the more um, correct term is intersex. Okay, next. Now, moving on to gender. The concept of gender is the condition of being a man, woman, both, or neither. It's a much, much more diverse topic. It's really complex. It's really broad. And malalaman nyo why I'm saying it's complex and it's broad as we progress through the discussion. Because if sex is mostly like the biological aspects, gender implies the psychological, behavioral, social, and cultural aspects of being masculine, feminine, both, or neither. And as I've said, it's a really diverse topic, meaning definitions may change, the concepts may change through time, through cultures. It can be influenced by culture as well. Ayon. So it's really complicated than we think it is. Sige, next. Okay, so eto, um, kino-compare lang naman what sex and gender is para mas mabilis siyang maintindihan. So, as I've said, biological ang sex, then gender is more on like a social thing. Sex is ascribed while gender is achieved. Sex is what you're born with, and gender can be learned, but both of them are proven to be fluid. Ayun. Sige, next. Do you have any questions, clarification so far? Feel free to like chat your questions if ever. Okay. So these are some of the gender terminologies. We're gonna go over them one by one. So we have gender assignment, gender role, gendered, gender binary, and gender dysphoria. So first up, we have gender assignment. So when we say gender assignment, basically this is a classification of an infant at birth as male or female based on their genitalia. So for intersex people, gender are usually assigned by parents or physicians. Para mas madaling maintindihan, for example, I was born with a female genital. So, ano, inassign akong female at birth because I have a female genitalia. But it's a different case for intersex people. Usually, kapag nakikitaan sila ng intersex traits, nung pinanganak sila, ina-assign na yung gender by parents or physicians, which can be hard for them kasi it may affect them in the long run. So the autonomy of an intersex individual's body and sexuality should be theirs. Ayun. So gender role naman is the expectations that go along with being a male or female. Like for example, society expects the males to be more emotionally stable than females kasi society thinks na females are really emotional, or females are expected to be really soft or homey. They are expected to stay at home, do the chores, while males are expected to go out there and do the job and be like, the financier of the family. Ganyan. And then gendered, from the word itself, these are the gendered things or activities. Like, for example, pink is usually associated with femininity and blue is associated with masculinity and things like that. So that's basically that. And then gender binary is a harmful social system, which tells us that there can only be masculine cisgender men and feminine cisgender women. Why is it harmful? Because it boxes people off and it excludes people of diverse Sogie. The concept of gender binary should be rejected because it's harmful and it's known to be oppressive and yun nga, alienating of people with diverse Sogie. And then Next is gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria can be described like a discomfort or distress that is usually associated with a person's gender identity. But it's important to note that this is not a disease and it's not like a universal experience for everyone. And not all gender non-conforming people or non-binary people experience gender dysphoria, and the experience of it can really vary from person to person. Ayon. Next, do you have any questions so far? We discussed like a lot of ano kasi terms, but I'll be willing to, like, kung kakailanganin nyo man ng materials, okay lang naman para mas ma-review nyo siya. Ayun. Tapos, ayan, asa na ba tayo? Gender identity. Ay, hindi, may question. Okay, so why is it so important to differentiate sex from gender? Ayan, kanina pa ako nagsasalita. Meron kayang gustong sumagot? Why are we differentiating sex from gender, and why is it important to differentiate them? Any answer? Sige, mag-aantay ako. Hindi tayo matatapos kung walang sasagot. Sure. Sige lang, kaya nyo yan.
Napasasakot dyan.
Ayan, go. Sige.
Napasasakot dyan. Kasi hindi ko alam
Answers.
eh.
Ayan. Sige, go.
I-unmute yung moment, Lance Lucas, if you wanna answer.
Hi, Kristine. I'm Lance Lucas. I'm from Bruja B Squad. Yeah, I think it's important to differentiate those parts, especially when we're studying Sogie. Because the first part is So, which has to do with sexual orientation, and the part na G, which has to do with gender identity. And as you mentioned, sexual orientation or the sex part is more related to what we have. It's more physical and at some point, while gender is more socially constructed. So it would be nice to see the differentiation of those two. And that's why we need to differentiate them.
That's actually right. As I've said earlier, then gender is a much complex term, no, rather than sex. So it includes like everyone. Kapag when we talk about gender, since it's really a diverse topic, ayon, and you know we're past that, like defining people based on their biological structures only. Ayun, that's a great answer. Anyone else would like to answer? But that's right.
Nababasa ako dito sa YouTube comments from my Mom Yao. He or she said, because sex is a biological constant while gender is a social construct.
Right, tama. Gender is a social construct, no? It's influenced by our culture, socially, psychologically, and the likes. Ayon. Thank you for answering. Ayan, may mga iba pang questions later. Sana sagot ulit kayo. Ayan, sige, next. Okay, sige, next pa. Okay, now we're moving on to the one component of Sogie, which is the gender identity. So, gender identity is defined as who you see yourself as, or kung paano mo kinikilala ang iyong sarili. So, gender identity is one's internal sense of being a man, being a woman, both or neither. Sige, next. Okay, so now these are some well-known gender identities. First off, we have cisgender. Cisgender is an adjective used to refer to having a gender identity that corresponds to one's sex assigned at birth. Like for example, para mas madali siyang intindihin, a cisgender man is a person assigned male at birth and identifies as a man, and a cisgender woman is a person assigned female at birth and identifies as a woman. Like for example, me, I identify myself as a cisgender woman because I was assigned female at birth and I identify myself as a woman. Ayon. That's basically that. And then transgender is an umbrella term and an adjective that describes people whose gender identity or gender role do not match to what is typically associated with their sex assigned at birth. So to better understand it, trans man, for example, is a person assigned female sex at birth but identifies as a man. And vice versa lang, trans woman is a person assigned male sex at birth but identifies as a woman. Um, it's important to note na not all gender non-conforming or non-binary people identify as trans. Ayun. And it's completely valid. Tapos since sinabi na adjective siya, when we're writing trans woman and trans man, yan yung nakikita niyo sa slide, meron siyang space in between, no? Kasi yon, trans is the adjective to describe the noun which is man or woman. Ayun. Sige, next is genderqueer. Genderqueer is a person whose gender identity is neither man nor woman, can be between or beyond genders, it can be a combination of genders, or someone who refuses gender altogether. Yung term na, yung gender identity na genderqueer is isa siyang radical or transgressive na term most of the time, which may include like a political agenda to challenge the gender binary. Ayon. And then agender is a person who does not identify with any gender at all. Then non-binary, a gender identity that is not exclusive to man or woman. One can identify as both or as neither. So from the term itself, the non-binary it's not binary. It challenges the binary as well. Maybe the main difference between genderqueer and non-binary is that oftentimes ginagamit for like a political use yung genderqueer. Ayon. And then a genderqueer person can like siya kasi, umbrella term siya for a person who can reject gender altogether. But non-binary is not a simple rejection of genders, ganyan. So that's the main difference between them. Ayan. And genderqueer can be an umbrella term. Ayan. Okay, so next, is that clarified or do we want to expound on that more? Excuse me.
Miss Kristine, may question
Yes,
po sa chat box. What's the difference between genderqueer and non-binary daw?
I thought nasagot ko. Hindi ba ko narinig? Yung answer ko earlier is that genderqueer usually is used for a radical or transgressive purposes or political agenda to it. Ayon. And yung genderqueer, umbrella term. Ayon. Ayan, nasagot na.
Thank you.
Ayun.
And meron pong question na isa pa. Is everyone that identifies as non-binary considered a genderqueer?
No, not necessarily, because the identity is really self-identified. So we can't really answer na everyone who identifies as non-binary is genderqueer because it can differ from person to person. Ayun. So not necessarily. Can I clarify? What do you want to clarify? Wait, nasagot muna ba yung naunang question? Yung, is everyone that identifies as non-binary considered genderqueer?
Hi,
Nasagot
Kristine.
na daw po.
Lance again. Sorry. Yeah, I just want to clarify lang. Kasi I'm just trying to grasp the concepts. So if we're saying gender queer, they're more into the rejection of the concept of gender, while non-binary is accepting that gender exists, but they don't want to associate themselves with either gender, or they embrace both genders. Is that how it is shown? But do I get that correctly, or are there more layers to
Some
that?
part, yes, kasi as I said earlier, genderqueer is an umbrella term that can include people who refuses gender altogether, that is sometimes used then for a political use to identify themselves, ganon. And non-binary is not a simple rejection of genders. Ayon.
Okay. Yeah. Last question lang. I think it came from the
Sure.
chat too. How about gender fluid? That's a new term too, and it's being used. Then, how do they
Oh,
differ
gender
from
fluid.
queer, non-binary, and fluid?
When we say fluid kasi, it can change from time to time. Actually, later, masasagot natin siya kasi gender fluid is more on the gender expression side rather than identity. Is the question answered? Later, matatakal
Yes.
natin
Thank
what gender
you.
fluid is. Ayan. Questions pa? Ayan. Mute pala. Ayan. May questions pa ba? Okay. Kung wala na, let's move on to gender expression. Ayan. So, wait. My question. So, why do we need to reject the gender binary? So, paulit-ulit na natin sinabi yan kanina because it's oppressive. It's not inclusive of people with diverse Sogie. Ayan. And it alienates people of diversity. Ayan. Okay. Sige, next. Okay. Sige, next pa. Yan. Gender expression. How you present yourself to the world o paraan ng pagpapahayag sa iyong sarili. Ayan. Sige, next. Now these are the well-known gender expressions. Ayan. Kung makikita nyo, nandyan yung gender fluid. Okay, so masculine and feminine is pretty self-explanatory kung paano ina-expect ng society na mag-express ng sarili yung mga kalalakihan or yung mga kababaihan, then that's basically it. Ayon. Then androgynous is an expression that tends to exhibit both masculine and feminine behavior to different extents. Wala namang slider or like percentage. It will really depend on the person on how they want to present themselves. So we can't expect them to like have a slider na, okay, ito ngayon like I'm 60% femme or 40% mas. Ayon. So we cannot really impose that to people because it will depend on them. Now, gender neutral from the word itself, tends to exhibit a minimal level of masculine or feminine behavior, and usually it may favor neither expression. Ayan, kasi neutral nga siya. And next is gender fluid. Yan, ito na yung sinasabi kanina. So, gender fluid is an expression that shows a wider range of behavior which may change on a daily basis. Yon, fluid siya because expression of an individual may vary, may change every time or every day. Ayon. Na-clarify ba what gender fluid is? Ayan. It's under the expression part. And then GNC or gender non-conforming, this is an expression that indicates a non-traditional gender presentation, like masculine woman or feminine man. Yun, yung mga non-traditional gender presentation, meaning they do not conform to the expectations or norms for their gender presentation or expression. Ayun. Do you have any clarifications? Ayan, do you have clarifications? Actually, parang medyo marami atang nagtatanong sa YouTube, but there are people from UPLB Babaylan that can answer your query since hindi ko nakikita from my end. Ayun, nakikita ko lang yung nasa Zoom. Ayun.
We're
But
also
they can
reminding
help
everyone.
answering queries.
We're also reminding everyone that there will be a second part of the event, which is a Q&A. So we are taking down all your questions from the YouTube comments.
Ayun. Pero okay lang na mag-ask ng questions. We'll try to answer them kasi may people from UPLB Babaylan. But so far, do you have any questions about gender expressions? Ayun. If not, I guess we'll move on to ayan. Does gender expression change from time to time? You can be gender neutral, but after like a few years, you can be gender fluid. Yes, definitely. It will depend on you. The only person who can impose expression to yourself is yourself. So, decision mo naman yun if you feel like you're more comfortable expressing yourself this way. Definitely, yes. It can happen. Same goes with like identities and orientations. Since gender nga is a complex thing to discuss, it can change from time to time depending on the person. It's not really fixed. One thing's for sure about this is it's not really fixed and may vary over time. Ayun.
Christine, may question lang from YouTube
Yes.
po. Ano daw pong ibig sabihin ng political use dun sa...
Oh, political use. Like for
Yeah.
example, genderqueer or queer itself, ginagamit kasi siya ng mga people na hindi nagko-conform sa ibang gender identity na pag-usapan natin kanina. So usually like radical or yung mga people na ay hindi nagko-conform to like specific labels. Usually yun yung for political use. Ganyan. If they do not want to conform on a specific like identity or orientation.
Meron pa pong isang question.
Sige lang.
So mas related po ba ang gender fluid sa behaviors aside from identity?
What do you mean like behaviors? Can I have like a more expound?
Miss VS from YouTube. Pa-clarify po.
Ayun. I think I get it. Kasi when we say gender expression, ano siya huge na variation siya. It can include behavior, it can include clothing, it can include what else? How you present yourself. So that includes behavior as well. So ayun, behavior is under gender expression or how we present ourselves. Ayan. Nalinaw ba? Definitely behavior is under gender expression. Because when we say gender expression, can we go back to the previous slide? And how you present yourself to the world. So it's not limited to like physical attributes lang. It can be influenced by a lot of factors, which includes your behavior or how you behave like sa konsepto ng ng gender or ng sexuality. Ganyan. Follow up on what? Sorry. On the behavior thing.
Hi, Kristine. Lance again. Sorry, makulit. Because I'm really interested on this topic. Yeah, I think what VS was trying to say, because I'm also in the chats in YouTube, it's more related to sexual behavior and sexual attraction. I think he's trying to differentiate that against the normal social behavior and attraction that we have with ourselves, maybe, or expression, if you get the picture or the division of that.
Actually, the attraction is more on the orientation side and not really on the concept of gender expression. Ayun. So if we're talking about like attraction, it doesn't really fall under this specific branch of Sogie, which is expression. Ayan.
Meron din pong question isa pa.
Sure, sige lang.
Pwede ba two or more yung gender expressions?
Definitely, hindi naman siya nililimit, no? Hindi naman siya pinupulis sa mga individual. It really depend on yourself. I mean, ayun, hindi siya pwedeng i-impose sa'yo. So, if you feel you're comfortable with presenting yourself with different expressions, then that's totally fine. Ayan. Okay. Sige, next slide. Tapos next pa ulit ata. Ayan. Question. Why does one's gender expression not necessarily reflect one's gender identity? Can anyone answer? Ayan, kanina pa kayo nagtatanong. Kaya ako naman yung nagtatanong. So, bakit hindi natin pwedeng sabihin na kailangan mag-reflect yung expression ng isang tao sa kanilang identity?
Can I answer again? Lance here.
Sure.
So ako nang dakilang volunteer. Yeah, kasi I think if you look at it in a different construct, I think the best way I saw that was the genderbread person, wherein you see the mind, the body, the heart, and the genitalia, and you see them as different concepts or different images. And if you look at it, not necessarily they would be aligned or they would match in one person. Let's say, I think if you watch RuPaul's Drag Race, one example would be si Gottmik. She is trans, or yeah, he is trans. He identifies as he or them, and then, but the gender expression he uses is more drag. So you could see the more feminine side. So it's like that. So it doesn't match usually. So that happens. And in this society, kasi we're all fluid. I mean, we're trying to put in labels to some certain things to understand them. But if you try to break down the labels in a way, I think we would have, it's like you have to go through the blurred lines, kumbaga. You just have to be open to the experience that what you think of a person that not necessarily matches their construct. Parang ganun, if you get the idea or the flow.
Yeah, actually true. Thank you for answering. That's actually right, no? And dagdag ko na lang siguro na when we like, kunyari for example, it may cause like misgendering a person. Like for example, you see a certain someone na medyo feminine siya gumalaw. Tapos like sinabi agad natin na baka bakla siya. So in-identify, nag-impose tayo ng identification niya sa sarili niya. So that may cause, it's really harmful, and that may cause misgendering someone, which we don't really want to do. Ayun. Sige.
May question po ako regarding that. When
Sure.
is it okay to ask for someone's identity? Or is there a time na it's okay?
Actually, for me, we should like normalize, especially if you're comfortable, no? It's normal for us to ask about their Sogie, ayon. But then, hindi natin sila pwedeng pilitin if they're comfortable. But it's important that we tried rather than, imposing or nanghuhula tayo kung paano nila ina-identify yung sarili nila. So it's always good. It's always good to like open topics about their Sogie, especially if they're comfortable enough to share it. Ayan. But then again, if they're not, we cannot really do something about that. But it's good that we did. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, kasi it's like you're asking a person, I think it depends on the culture too, pero you just have to do it politely, kasi that's what I've learned through the different Sogie I've attended to, na just do it politely. It's just asking a woman's age, if you know the concept of that. It's just like, it's the same concept too. You're asking a person Sogie as if you're asking the ASL of a person, or you're asking what's the age of a person. So it should be seen like that. If you can do that to ask a person, how old are you? It should be that way too. Na, oh, what's your Sogie? What identity do you refer to? If you don't mind me asking, um, how do you call yourself, or what pronouns do you use? You may find it culturally in the Philippines something to get used to, but eventually we'll get there.
Actually, true. It's a good thing that you added the thing about pronouns, kasi that's also one important thing to do, no? Rather than like um nanghuhula tayo on what pronouns that they use. It's okay to ask, no? And maganda na meron tayong pagkukusa sa pagtatanong, because it really does the thing when we normalize like asking for people's pronouns, like how they identify themselves. That's okay. Ayan. It's always a good thing to do. Ayan. Sige, next. Okay, sige, next pa. Ayan. So we're now in sexual orientation. So the last of the components. So sexual orientation is defined as who you are attracted to o direksyon ng yung sexual, emotional, romantikong pagnanasa. So it involves romantic, emotional, physical attraction. Ayun. Sige, next. Now, these are some of the well-known sexual orientations. So first is heterosexual. So basically, this is the person who has emotional, romantic, or sexual attraction towards a different gender. Sa mas casual na term, ito yung straight for like a more casual term. But sa formal term and probably like the term that we should use, ayun, heterosexual. Basically, kapag attracted ka sa opposite gender. Ayun. And then, homosexual. A person who has emotional, romantic, and sexual attractions predominantly towards the same gender. So, under that, merong iba't ibang labels, iba't ibang orientations. And let's start first with gay. So, gay is a self identified man who is romantically, sexually, emotionally attracted to other self identified men. Um, Although sometimes yung gay is ginagamit siya as an umbrella term. Okay, sorry, bumabagal yung internet ko. Ayan, na nadi-disconnect ako. Ayun, then sometimes, gay is used like an umbrella term to define non-heterosexual people, no, as an umbrella term. So collectively, in general, para i-identify yung people na hindi heterosexual, ginagamit yung gay as a general term or an umbrella term. And then moving on, we have lesbian. Okay, so a lesbian is a woman or woman-aligned non-binary person who is exclusively attracted to women and women-aligned non-binary people. So, sa mas lumang definition ng lesbians, usually women attracted to women only. Pero sa mas inclusive na term, because non-binary lesbians are valid. So, ito yung pinaka inclusive at yung pinaka-recent na definition for a lesbian. Ayun. Hindi ko lang sure kung nakikita nyo yung like discussion sa Twitter na about bi lesbians or pan lesbians. If you see people like identifying themselves as bi lesbian or pan lesbians, it's important to educate them na those three are different from each other, and it's harmful to the lesbian community, to the bi and the pan community to identify as such. Ayun. And then next we have bisexual. Okay. Bisexual is a person who is romantically or sexually attracted to people of the same and other genders. Meaning, bisexual is not binary or is not an attraction between just two genders. So that concept, that definition is entirely wrong. Kasi from the other, sa mas mga lumang definition ng bisexuality, dinedefine nila to as like attraction to man and woman only. Ayon. So, it's wrong because bisexual, although merong prefix na bi, is not binary. So, it's important to also note the bisexuality has always been trans inclusive. It's inclusive of the non-binary people and the trans people. So my question, how about the terms that have to do with sexual or romantic? For example, I know someone who's asexual and panromantic. We'll tackle about that later. But to reiterate again, sexual orientation is romantic, sexual, and emotional attraction to people, right? So, um, itatakal natin what a sexuality is and what a romantic is. Ayon. But it's definitely under the sexual orientation topic. Ayon. And then, sa mas yung pansexual naman, yung recent na definition to it is a person that is attracted to all genders. So, if you actually think about it, pansexuality and bisexuality are closely related to each other. And as I've said, this is pretty normal to happen, especially among labels. For some, pansexuality is a category under the bisexual umbrella. Some think that they are entirely separate things and so on. Kung matatandaan niyo yung sinabi ko kanina, gender is a really complex term because
Looks like Miss San Agustin is
Nahihirapan yata yung
technical
internet.
difficulties. Okay. We'll wait for her.
So, magbabasa muna tayo ng comments sa YouTube. Mhm.
Ayan,
Oh, she's
sorry,
Ayan,
ang
okay,
bagal ng
go.
internet ko.
Okay. It's okay.
So, kung babalikan natin yung definition ng gender kanina, it's really complex. It's really broad, and influenced by time, by culture. So, it can really change. The definition and the concepts can change through time. But it is important to understand na both are inclusive of people with diverse soji at all times, and none of which are binary. Ayon. Another important thing siguro to remember is that pansexuality and bisexuality can coexist without us having to invalidate one of the labels, or just throw the concept of pansexuality under the bus if they are really, even if they're really the same. No, we can just throw pansexuality away because people have been so comfortable to identify as pan for years now, and they feel the safest using this term, and that is completely valid. Ayun nga, just like we discussed earlier, it's gender is a really complex term, and we can't really stop doing studies about gender or talking about gender because it's really broad. It's a really wide topic. So definitions and concepts may evolve. But this discussion, even if merong like discourse about bi and pan, it should never box people nor divide individuals. Um, Especially those na nasa bi and pan community, because both should be accepting of each other and inclusive of trans and non-binary individuals. And at the end of the day, labels are part of your self-identity, meaning only you can truly put a label for yourself. So if you identify as bi, that's okay. If you choose to identify as pan, that's also okay. So as long as we are not exclusive of other genders or we are not harming people within the community, that is totally okay. yung labels kasi ano siya self-identified. So whatever you feel, the sense of belongingness, whatever label that resonates with you the most, it's entirely up to you. Ayun, one last thing, labels aren't supposed to divide us in our community. So we should not like favor one label than the other and cause harm within the community. Because if anything, it should give us a sense of belongingness and safety in our community. Ayun, it's the discourse about bisexuality and pansexuality can really take a long time, and some might say na pansexuality is under the bi plus umbrella. For us, hanggang ngayon, actually, pinag-uusapan pa rin namin kung paano i-differentiate yung bisexuality and pansexuality, or can we really differentiate them, or is it really like the bi plus umbrella? So, to be honest, hanggang ngayon, like pinag-uusapan pa rin siya, magsa-schedule pa rin kami ng meeting to further discuss about this. But the most important thing is that as long as your definition for pansexual is not biphobic, and as long as your definition of bisexual is not binary and it's inclusive of non-binary and the trans people, then you're good to go. Ayun. So feeling ko ang dami kong sinabi about pansexuality and bisexuality, because this is really like a really long thing to discuss. And I really don't want to cause like crisis within like the pan people or the bi people, because both are valid. Ayun. Katulad ng how do we clearly differentiate, yung ginagamit naming definition ngayon is yung bisexual is a person who is attracted to people of the same and other genders. Then pansexuality is attracted to all genders. Meron siyang nag-overlap siya kasi it sounds the same, and maybe it is, but maybe nga yung katulad ng sinabi ko kanina, it can be under the bi plus umbrella, which is also okay. But right now we are still undergoing like a discussion about this. Sige, go lang.
Hi, Tin. Hi, Kristine. Lance again. Sorry, I empathize with the people on YouTube right now because we're all kind of confused with the terms. As far as I know, like what you said, bi coming from its roots, bi, which means two people, pan, which means all. So I know they get reversed. I don't want to invalidate any of the two sides, but let's say, here's an example though. I'm throwing out an example. I think I saw this before in a YouTube video called Genderquake, and she associates herself as a trans woman, but she's falling in love with a lesbian. So where does she fall under which sexual orientation now?
That's a
Would
great
she be called
question.
bisexual or a pansexual? Would she be queer? How do we
That's a great
define
insight.
that?
But i-reiterate ko ulit, we cannot really say because we cannot impose labels on them. Even if we give like an example na, what if this person is trans, then na in love siya sa like a lesbian? We don't know. Like, we cannot tell that. We cannot impose labels to anyone because only them can answer that for us actually. Kasi nga yung orientation ay self-identified.
So,
Ayun.
let's say I'm the person. I'm that person na kunwari, I'm currently struggling if I am, for example, I think I'm bisexual or I think I'm pansexual, but in reality, I could be either bisexual, queer, or asexual. So it all matters, just to make it clarified to the others then on YouTube na it all depends on which label I identify with, and is that correct? And it all depends
Definitely.
to if I want to keep it unlabeled. Because I know that's a new trend now, especially with the coming fluidity of all the terms na I've been hearing, wherein people just don't want to be labeled anymore because it confuses people like hell. So, like for example, for my case, if you ask me who I love, I would just say I currently love this person. I'm currently in love with this spirit or this energy or this masculine energy, maybe. Parang ganun. So, yeah.
And
I hope.
mhm.
Go ahead.
And that's completely valid, no? If you're still like confused to what you will identify yourself, it's okay, it's valid. Kasi nga, how we explore ourselves is not really something that happens overnight or with just one sitting. It can take a while depending on you. Ayun. So, it's right when you said earlier na if you identify as this or this, it's okay. Like, hindi ipupulis ng mga tao na, no, you can't identify as that and then change it or identify as this the following day. Like, wala namang ganong rule when identifying ourselves. So, everyone is free to choose a label that resonates with them the most. Ayun.
Yeah. As long as you're happy and in love.
Definitely. Actually, tama. Ayun. So,
Thank you.
nobody can really impose it to you and you can only like label yourself for yourself. Yeah.
Yes, and like what one show said, it's time to take back our own narratives and own stories. So we decide which one we want at the end of the day.
Period. Tama.
Pero for labeling sake lang, just to clarify lang, I'm trying to grasp everything. For labeling sake, so for you guys, bisexual and pansexual, how would you, I don't want to use the term, put them in a box or put them in a label that we could understand in the simplest form?
My manifestation CJ. So that's why it's important to attend these kind of talks to be educated to understand on what to label ourselves. But I think it takes time to fully understand all the labels. Actually, marami siyang di ba no, ang sobrang broad ng usapin ng gender. And yung pagle-label naman sa sarili, again, it's self-identified. So take all the time that you want. Ayun. As long as bisexuality and pansexuality, kahit na nag-overlap siya to each other, both are valid, no? As long as inclusive yung definition ng pareho. And whatever resonates with you the most, like kung pansexual yung gusto mong i-label, ayun, let go. Ayun. Are there any more questions? Okay. Ay, wait, may question ba si Lucas kanina? Like, for me ba yun? Parang narinig ko kasi like for the bi and pan people na nasa meeting. Tama ba? Or is it for me?
Yeah, it's for you. I mean, just to ask lang.
Okay.
In your form of study, so in the simplest way, how would you define bi and pan in terms of intellectual discourse? Yung
like personally,
separate it.
Personally, for me, like ako lang naman to, not influenced by any other people. I take it as like meron kasing history about the concept of pansexuality na nag-rise daw yung concept ng pansexuality because people thought na hindi inclusive yung bisexuality. But now that we know that it is, are we gonna throw the concept of pansexuality just straight away, even if there are people who identifies as pan? No, definitely not. And labels for me, if they're really the same, then go for it. I mean, in my own personal opinion, pansexuality can be under the bi plus umbrella. Ayun. And definitions are really like just the same, because if we define bisexuality as a attraction to the same or other genders, and then pansexuality is attraction to all genders, then it's kind of the same, right? Because both are inclusive of NB and the trans people. So ayun yung personal take ko with that about labels in general, na hindi dapat natin sila pinagbabangga sa isa't isa and cause confusion inside the community. Kasi yung goal ng pag-identify natin sa label is para magkaroon tayo ng sense of belongingness. Pero kung patuloy natin na pinagbabangga yung mga labels with each other, magkakaroon siya ng conflict, ng confusion, at baka yung exclusion ay magmula pa sa community natin itself. So, they can coexist. That's my personal hot take between the bi and pan discourse, actually. They can coexist. Ayan. Are there like any questions?
Meron lang ako nakita sa Twitter, Miss Tin.
Sure.
Sabi niya
sige.
dito, what's the take on the whole pansexuality is inherently biphobic? Hot take that's popping out on Twitter these days.
That's probably the hot take that we should dismantle. And whenever we see people who like define pansexuality as biphobic, we have the responsibility to educate them that it's not. Ayon. It's definitely not. So, yung hot take na yon probably is like, I don't know, maybe from a person that is not inclusive of the bi people, of the bi community. Ganon. So, that's the hot take that we definitely should not like, I don't know, remember or like i-grasp kasi harmful siya. Because you know, yung take is that both are welcoming of each other, both labels. Ayun. So, again, yung sinabi ko kanina, if you define bisexuality as in a non-panphobic way or in an inclusive way, then you're good. And if you define pansexuality in a bi-inclusive and be-inclusive and trans-inclusive way, then you're good to go. Ayun. Sige. My questions pa ba, or we can move on to the next?
Next
So,
na po.
Sige, go. Ayun. Siguro reminder na lang na hindi pa rin tapos yung discourse about bisexuality and pansexuality, but always remember to choose a label that will resonate with you the most. It doesn't matter if it's bi or it's pan. Whatever you want, whatever you're comfortable with, then that's fine. Ayun. So, what's the difference between sexual preference and sexual orientation? Ayan. So, sexual preference are more on just, the things that you like on a person, like physically, yung traits, kumbaga, like, mahilig ka ba sa matangkad, mahilig ka ba sa chinito, preference. Ayun lang naman yan. Tapos, sexual orientation is your romantic, emotional, and sexual attraction. Katulad nung mga sinabi natin kanina. Tapos, hindi sila pwedeng ipag-interchange and hindi sila synonymous to each other. Kasi kapag sinabi natin na pareho lang sila, merong implication na sexuality is just a matter of preference or it's a matter of choice, which is not. Ayun. Sige, next. Ay, wait. Nalagpasan natin yung asexual pala. Can you go back to sa bakong nadala ng by pan discussion. So, asexual, yung sinabi kanina, someone who does not experience sexual attraction, little to no sexual attraction for people of any gender. Ayun, some asexual people desire romantic relationships while others do not. And it's not a medical condition. It's really normal for people to not desire for sexual attraction. And same goes with aromantic people. So pag aromantic naman, someone who with a little to no attraction, romantic attraction. So ayun na, for people of any gender. And then pareho lang din, aromantic people may desire sexual relationships while others do not, and it's completely valid. Tapos Meron akong kanina nakita na yung pan-romantic daw. Ayun, so mahaba pa yung usapin about that, pero paikliin ko na lang. Kasi asexual and aromantic is a broad, it's a wide spectrum. So asexual people can identify with an orientation that they are most comfortable with. Like an asexual people can identify as a lesbian and that's okay. Or as bi, as pan, that's okay. Same goes with aromantic people. Kaya may with aromantic people, so they can still identify as pan or as bi, kaya may biromantic, panromantic, and the likes. Ayun. And then queer is an umbrella term for people who is not heterosexual. So para siyang gay na minsan ginagamit like as a general term for people na hindi heterosexual. Historically, considered siya to be a derogatory term, pero ngayon ay nire-reclaim siya by the LGBTQ plus community. Ayun. Sige, next slide. So what's it?
Christine,
Ayan.
question.
Sure. Sige.
About lang sa asexuality. Considered ba na part ng LGBTQ plus community ang hetero-romantic asexuals?
That's another thing about asexual people. Not all of them identifies as part of the community as well as the intersex people. So it will really depend on them kung paano sila mag-identify as a person, kung ano yung orientation nila, and if they feel like they belong in the LGBTQ plus community. Ayun, it will really depend on them.
So pag sinabi nila na cis-het sila, na
So,
hetero-romantic, tapos
ayun.
asexual sila, pwedeng part pa rin sila ng community? Pwedeng hindi?
Pwedeng hindi. Kasi asexual is more on like, sexual attraction. Tapos yung romantic attraction nila is hetero, right? So like, that's towards the opposite gender. So, pwede silang mag-identify as not like part of the LGBTQ plus community. Ayun. But it will still depend on them based on their attraction.
Thank you.
Wait, my question, do we have like stats or percentage ng mga orientations? What do you mean, like ilang percentage ang lesbians or gay population? Is this more on like the statistics ng population side or... And habang inaantay natin yung sagot niya, ito yung genderbread person, nabanggit to kanina. Usually hindi to ginagamit, especially kapag nakapag-discuss naman tayo ng ng Sogie na iniisa-isa talaga natin siya. But this is a good start. So, usually ginagamit siya sa mga offices, ganyan. Tapos, kung medyo mahirap kasi, diba, kung nakita nyo, ang daming terms, so ang dami nating sinasabi. So, ayun. But this is a great start kung gusto natin mag-educate, especially dun sa medyo mahihirapan ng sobrang daming terms. Ayun. Sige, next.
Hello? Kaya pa ba siyan? Ayan. Sige, go, Lens.
Hi. While we're waiting for Tin, kasi I think I also attended the Sogie. We did the Sogie too with Bruha B Squad. So I think one of the lessons we learned from Thais, she is the Metro Manila pride. She tried to help us break down in easier way what Sogie is all about or what we are talking about, mas madali. So the metaphor she used was the bed. We all do that. We all sleep on the bed. We all have one. And we also go to bed, kumbaga. So if you break down the bed into the three different aspects of Sogie, I think it will be easier to digest somehow. Let's say you'd have to think of three ways in that. It's who you are at bed, who are you with in bed, and what do you dress as in bed? So the first Soji is, who are you with at bed? That's sexual orientation. Sino ang nakita mong katabi mo sa kama habang natutulog ka? Is it a trans woman? Is it a man? Is it a woman, a female? Is it non-binary? So that is your sexual orientation when you look at your partner or the person sleeping besides you. And then gender identity naman would be who you think of you or who are you in bed. That is your entirety or what your mind would say. Kung ano naisip mo, tingin mo babae ka ba habang natutulog ka? Tingin mo bang tao ka? Or tingin mo bang I am a trans woman, proud and like that? And the expression side would be who or what are you wearing while you're sleeping in bed? Are you wearing a dress? Are you wearing pajamas? Are you going commando? What's the expression of how you sleep? So yun. Then I was just telling them na I'm using, kasi we've been through different Sojis then, and we've been using the metaphor of who you are in bed, who you sleep with in bed, and what they dress in bed as the Soji. So wherein sexual orientation would be who are you sleeping with in bed, gender identity is who you are in bed, and expression would be what are you dressing as in bed. So they don't necessarily match in a way. Like for my case, I would see a guy sleeping next to me in bed. I'd be wearing boxers while I'm on bed, and I think of myself as a man on bed. So ganun. I hope it clears
Hello.
things up too and breaks it down in a very simplest way.
Ayun. Sorry na nawawala yung internet ko. But that's like a metaphor that they use to explain Soji in the simplest way. Pero sometimes it can cause confusions pa rin kasi baka medyo nabobox yung people na expression is just, how you dress, wherein it's a much more broad concept. But it's a good way to start actually. Wait, may question pa. Does genes affect sexual orientation? Nung may nabasa kasi ako, like studies, there's definitely no gay genes. Although may mga scientists na pinag-aaralan nila na biology may play a role in someone's sexuality, but from the recent studies, wala pang nakapag-prove na like biology does affect how we identify ourselves in like sa konsepto ng Soji or ng orientation. So I think wala pang like stable na findings about that. Ayun. Sige, next.
Miss Kristine, may tanong ulit
Sure.
ako. Slur po ba ang halaman pag nagpa-pertain sa asexuals?
Halaman. Ano yung Sorry, ano yung halaman?
Like,
Don't we like...
pag sinabihan mo
sige, sure.
ng plant, ganyan, or halaman, ang mga is?
Ano yung...
Is
Sorry,
it a
ano
slur?
ano yung like context ng halaman? Bakit natin sila nire-refer as halaman in the first place? Ayun.
Tanong ko lang po.
Ayun. Siguro it may cause like like confusion or baka may ma-offend when we refer to them like as a halaman. Like wala lang. Like personally siguro kapag sinabihan ako na halaman ako, what? I'm a person, ganon. So just to be like safe, especially kung hindi naman nila alam yung konteksto, siguro let's refrain from labeling them as a plant. Ayun. Sige, next. Eto na ba yun? Why is it important to differentiate the three components of Soji? Ayun. It will really depend on the context. Pero if walang context yung pagsabi, siguro magkakaroon ng confusion about individuals. So, pag may gusto pag sumagot, why is it important to differentiate the three components of Soji?
Any answers, guys? May nagsabi dito sa Zoom group chat from CJ to prevent confusion daw.
tama, yan, to prevent na rin misgendering, yan. Because although they come like hand in hand, they're still independent of each other. Kasi nga, we can't just, impose like, feeling ko ano siya, lesbiana siya or like bakla siya based on how they express themselves. That's like so wrong in so many levels. Kaya natin iniisa-isa yung components ng Sogie. Ayun, sige. Next. Ayan, wala na pala. These are just references na. But we still have to tackle something about bisexuality. Can I share my screen?
Yes po. You can share your screen
Sige.
na.
Okay, thank you. Wait lang. There. Hala, hindi ko pala nakikita. Yan. So, Bisexuality 101, ita-touch lang natin siya since magpo-focus tayo more on like misconceptions and debunking stereotypes about bisexuals. Ayun, as we stated earlier, bisexuals are people who are, romantically and or sexually attracted to people with the same or other genders. So, they can be attracted to their genders like their own or different from their own. Ayan. So, paulit-ulit natin reiterate na bisexuality is not binary, therefore it's inclusive of non-binary people. So, dito sinabi dyan na yung definition ng bisexuality as being attracted to only two genders or men and women only is hugely incorrect. Kasi pinapakita no na nag-exist yung gender binary or yung gender binary ay like sinusupport ng bisexuality, which is incorrect kasi kanina pa natin sinasabi na we are dismantling the concept and challenging the concept of gender binary because it's oppressive and not inclusive. So ito na yung iba sa mga misconceptions, stereotypes about bisexuals. You can check this out on our Twitter account, but ayun, i-discuss ko na lang din dito to likely explain. So bisexuals are not sexually promiscuous and unfaithful. Tapos, being attracted to many genders does not mean one is attracted to everyone. Sexual orientation does not dictate sexual behavior or preferences. So, yon, sinasabi kasi nila na bisexual people are unfaithful, they're most likely to cheat. But to be honest, everyone is capable of cheating, and it's yung to be cheated on is a sad thing, sure. But then yung konsepto ng cheating is not exclusive to bisexual people only. Ayun. So that's wrong to say na bisexual people are cheaters or unfaithful because they're not. So yung hindi naman na-influence ng sexual orientation mo yung cheating. So, ayun. Tapos, ayan. So, again, kaya natin differentiate yung sexual orientation tsaka yung preferences or behavior kasi they're both different from each other, which we explained earlier. Bisexuals are not half straight. Ayun. So, this is a popular stereotype or misconception. Bisexual people are not 50-50 because there really is no like percentage when it comes to like attraction. We cannot impose that to them. Ayun. Tas sabi pa, they aren't less oppressed than gay men or lesbians. And this is another stereotype because one thing to remember is that we have different forms of struggles as a community and as individuals. Therefore, and for years, diba, we have been alienated from the society. We have been isolated, no? Lagi tayong hindi included. So, hindi dapat natin pinaglalaban-laban yung struggles na nararanasan ng bawat komunidad. Hindi dapat tayo nagsasabi na, bi people are not really that oppressed kasi they aren't gay or they aren't lesbians. So, if anything, dapat yung community natin yung nagtutulungan para ma-dismantle yung mga stereotypes na to. Ayun. Ayan, bisexuals are not indecisive or confused. Ito yung laging take on bisexuality because share ko lang before I identify as bi. Tapos, there's like a certain someone na, maybe you're just confused and maybe, it's just a phase that will go away. So, I was so offended kasi, ano, yung ganong stereotype, palagi pa rin siyang nangyayari and present pa rin siya until ngayon. Because bi people are not confused. We love who we love and that's it. That does not make us confused. Bisexuals do not have to pick a side. So bisexuality is every bit as real and as final as other sexual orientation. A bi person knows their orientation even if they haven't been in a relationship with people of different genders or they have ever been in a relationship at all. So hindi naman requirement na like you try to be with like the same gender as yours just to prove um na kung ma-prove yung orientation mo or something. Ayun. And some bi people can identify themselves even without having to have a relationship with, other people. So iba-iba naman kasi tayo ng process or ng pinagdadaanan on how we discover our sexuality, and that's totally valid. It differs from a person to another. Ayan. These are some common forms of biphobia. Bisexual denial. For example, question yung existence ng isang bisexual man or seeing bisexual people as confused about their sexuality. Ayan, like for example, when merong bisexual man na ina-identify niya yung sarili niya as bisexual man, some people might comment na, no, you're not bisexual, parang pinapaganda mo lang yung label mo. Maybe you're really gay tapos confused ka lang. So, yun yung bisexual denial and another form of like biphobia. Ayun. Then common forms of biphobia, bisexual invisibility or erasure. Now, this will resonate the most tungkol sa topic nyo, diba? Which is, ano yun, sorry, I forgot. yung, I forgot. Basta yung bi invisibility and erasure, diba? For example, we're assuming that people are either heterosexual or lesbian or gay and assuming sexuality on the basis of their current partner. Like for example, a person who identifies as bi, then currently is meron siyang male partner. So ini-invalidate siya na hindi siya bi because of their current partner, which is wrong. That's bisexual erasure. So a person can be bi without having to explain themselves. Why are they in same sex in like a different gender relationship? Ganon. So if a person will say na they're bi, then they're bi, end of discussion. We shouldn't be questioning the validity of that. Ayun. Another common form of biphobia is bisexual exclusion or marginalization. For example, claiming to speak for LGB or LGBT people, but then neglecting bisexual specific issues, or including bisexual people in research, but combining the responses with those of lesbians and gay men. So, ito naman more on like the representation of the bi people. This may include representation in media, or in research, or in news. So, na-exclude yung experiences ng bi people tapos sinasama sila to the lesbian or the gay community because people think na bi people are just the same with lesbians or gay men. So that's another form of biphobia when they exclude the experiences of bisexual people. Next, on negative stereotypes. For example, assuming that bisexual people are promiscuous, spreaders of disease, incapable of monogamy, a threat to relationships, families, or sexually available to anyone. First and foremost, yung usapin ng polygamy, it's outside the usapin ng LGBTQ+, because people with diverse, regardless of their Sogie, can practice monogamy or polygamy, no? Hindi siya exclusive to the LGBTQ+ community. Hindi tayo like cheaters, hindi tayo naninira ng relationship of other people. So, ayun. Next. This is something from the Bisexual Manifesto. It's kind of long. Pero ang sinasabi lang naman dyan is, ayan, do not assume that bisexuality is binary or duocamus in nature. Ayan, that we only have two sides. As we stated earlier, bisexuality, even if it has a prefix bi, doesn't mean two. And it has always been inclusive of anyone regardless of their Sogie. Ayan. 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 Sabi dyan, in ancient Greece, Rome, and Japan, for example, men were often expected to take on other men as lovers before marriage with women. So, may nangyayaring ganong practice, no, na alam mo yon, pinipilit sila, like for some countries, pinipilit yung dalawang lalaki muna na magpakasal before marrying a woman. That's a really like sad part of the bi history. Tapos ayan, sabi nila may mga naniniwala na bisexuals were either heterosexual seduced into homosexual behaviors or individuals who could not control their sexual desires, because that's definitely false, no? Hindi naman tayo like kinonvert, or bi people are not converted into like para maging homosexual person, kasi being bi or kahit na ano doon sa mga sexual orientations na nabanggit natin kanina is natural, no? It has existed long before. So, hindi siya bagong konsepto at hindi siya dinaan sa isang like conversion na tayong lahat ay dating mga straight people na sineduce na maging homosexual. So, that's awfully bad. Tapos, all of those biphobic ideas, concepts, misconceptions are still common today. That is why it's important na pinag-uusapan natin yung common forms ng misconceptions about bisexuality and other sexual orientations as well, because there are a lot and it's really painful to read, especially kung ano mo yon, you're trying so hard to educate yourself about the community, then you're gonna read some remarks like this. So ayun. So why bi visibility is important? Sobrang haba nito, but it's important kasi everyone is like, according na rin sa research, merong mga risk na dahil sa patuloy na isolation or exclusion of the bi people, patuloy sila na ine-erase sa maraming forms ng media, researches, and papers. Yung isolation na yon may cause like negative mental health outcomes or impact to the bisexual youth or the bisexual people. So, when people feel like they're isolated, ayun, so that's where nangyayari yung like nakakaapekto with our health, mental health, physical health. So, ayun. It's important to always include the bi people in the narrative, may it be in the form of a movie, of a series, of a research, of a paper. Ayun. So, how to be a good bisexual ally? So, educate yourself about the community, like what we're doing tonight. Learn to recognize biphobic stereotypes and misconceptions and how to debunk them. So it's painful to read, especially if you identify yourself as bi, but there's no other way that we can debunk the stereotypes without educating ourselves about it. And then when we do, we transfer and we educate other people as well. So how to be a good bi ally? Ayan, an important reminder to everyone. So coming out is never easy. If someone is trying to come out, be understanding and never pressure them. They will take their own time. Wala tayong ibang gagawin kundi makinig at tanggapin sila genuinely. coming out is a very like long process. Yeah, and it's a hard process. So if you have a friend coming out to you, be the most welcoming person that you can be. Ayun, to understand me. Ayan. Ayon, spectrum check, vanishing B. Ayon, vanishing, gawa nga nung bisexual erasure, exclusion, then stereotypes. So, actually, sobrang evident ng exclusion ng the bi community. Kasi we rarely see like people portray bi characters in media, right? Tapos, ayon, actually, I can't think of a specific series na nag-revolve around like na may bi characters or like genuine portrayal ng bi character. So we still have a long way to go in terms of media representation, especially of the bisexual community and the pan community. Yeah, that's about it for um, debunking the stereotypes about bisexuality. If you have any other questions, please free to do so.
Ayun. Thank you, Miss Kristine, for the wonderful, insightful, and eye-opening talk about Sogie and its
Yeah.
importance in the community.
Thank you so much, Miss Kristine. So we are now about to start the question and answer portion of the talk. Earlier, we asked you guys to send your questions via the YouTube live stream or via tweets with the hashtag PND Spectrum Check, and of course from the Google Forms and through the Zoom chats.
Grabe, no? Sobrang nakakataba ng utak yun.
Sobra.
Yeah.
I also just want to circle back to the question why we should be why it's important to educate and to differentiate the different sojis. I guess it's not only because we have to be more educated because we have to understand them because it's the right thing to do. We shouldn't be invalidating people. So even if you don't understand certain gender expressions, it is not for you to understand, but for you to respect it
Mm-hmm.
as a person.
Oo.
Yes.
Ito lang, we would also like to acknowledge the presence of the other members of the UPLB Babaylan who are currently assisting Ms. San Agustin in answering the questions that you have filled out in the YouTube comments. We want to say thank you for
True.
such a great help. Ayan,
Thank you
Ayan,
guys so
true.
much.
Medyo marami kasing inquiries and we can't really like answer all of them. So they volunteered to watch the live or be in the Zoom meeting to assist in answering the questions.
Ayan. So mag-start na tayo ng questions, no? Eto, Miss Teen may tanong from at Anton the boy from G Forms. About the Soji bill, how will it benefit us in the LGBTQIA plus community?
Oh, that's an interesting question. It will benefit us in all the ways possible when it comes to education, when it comes to expression, when it comes to basic human rights. Like, for example, um, kasi 'di ba walang law na na specific to like SOGI protection or protection of people belongs to the LGBTQ plus community. So if we have the SOGI equality bill, it will help us to na mabigyan tayo ng hustisya ng pantay na karapatan. So for students, for example, meron mga schools kasi na naglilimit ng people um, na kapag lalaki ka, you should wear like pants or kapag babae ka, you should wear um, skirts, ganyan. Tapos, on how we express ourselves in general in school, covered din siya ng Soji Equality Bill and ayun, it's a really important thing to discuss at mas paingayan pa kasi helpful siya in any way possible.
So another question from at underscore NCLMC. He or she asks, he, she, they ask, what do you think is the positive effect towards the personal development of an individual if their soji is understood and recognized by the people around them?
Definitely, we don't have to explain ourselves all the time. We won't owe anyone an explanation about ourselves, no? If people are well educated about the components of soji, what sexual orientation, identity, and expression are, then like imagine yung mabubunot na responsibility sa bawat isa sa atin na pag-explain at pag-validate ng mga sarili natin just because for years hindi naiintindihan yung konsepto ng diversity ng Soji. So definitely, yun yung the best thing that could ever happen. And of course, if people are uh accepting of individuals with diverse Soji, it's a step, it's actually a leap, no, na for towards genuine gender liberation.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that, Miss Kristine. So another question from coming from the G forms at CJ underscore Canlas de Santos. If a bi male would still want to have a wife and family of his own in the near future, do you recommend na mag-out pa rin siya to his or her friends and family?
I wouldn't recommend anything because again, coming out will depend on that certain person. So, kung yung person na yon hindi niya pipiliin na sabihin yung history about that, then that's okay. Hindi naman niya utang yung explanation to other people. No. But kung pipiliin niya na sabihin, then go ahead. No. Either way, decision yun ng person na pinapertain niya.
Yes. Sabi nga dito na sa YouTube section kay Cole Nacionales, ang pag-out ay pansariling desisyon.
Yes.
Yes.
Totoo yan. Eto, from Accelerated, sa G-Forms din siya. Any film, series, media content that you know of or and would recommend to us that shed light on in terms of bisexuality?
Again, I don't know any like series or films na nagfo-focus sa bisexuality. But we do have a sapphic film recommendation sa Twitter thread ng Babaylan. You can check that out. When you visit our Twitter account, we have a thread ng movie recommendations na sapphic love. So, you can get ideas from there. Ayun. Ang haba ng list na yon. So, sana ma-enjoy niyo yung list. You can also follow us on Twitter for like updates whenever we post new threads. UPLB Babaylan. Ayun.
Thank you, Miss Kristine. Okay.
Go, Miss Buri.
So we're trying to look for more questions. This is coming from Twitter at Puta. Okay. What's the take on the whole? Oh, this is already answered before. Okay, so we'll move on to at KissCuddle28 on Twitter. What books or articles or websites can we read about the LGBTQIA plus if they're trying to dig in on issues about gender expressions and sexualities?
For bi-specific, I would recommend the Bisexual Manifesto. We have a lot of references from UPLB Babaylan. Maybe I can share that with you because it has a long list of materials.
Yeah.
But you can remind me again to send those materials because I can gladly share those with you. Ayun, para mas mapalawak din natin yung learning natin about it.
Ihingi po kami niyan. May
Sige
question
lang.
from the chat box. If you have something to change or add to the Soji bill, what will it be?
Parang ang
Taray.
sobrang Miss Pageant nung yung
Oo.
question.
Very fast.
Actually, I don't think, may kailangan pang i-revise kasi, na siya, ni-revise na siya ng, I think, yung Gabriela Women's Party, meron silang revision na ginawa. So, ayun, it's very inclusive sa to everyone of diverse Soji, ganyan. So, hindi kasi ako policy maker. But, ayun, as far as I know, kino-cover naman na lahat ng mga important matters, especially sa community natin. So, ayun.
Eto, may question then from G-Forms from Miss Coco. How does one distinguish between biphobia and preference?
Biphobia and preference. Can I expound on that? The difference between biphobia
Paano
and
madi-distinguish?
preference?
Kasi 'di ba yung mga ibang tao, sabi nila ayaw nila mag-date ng bi, ganyan.
This is also a plot point on episode 1 of From Next Door.
Yeah.
Anong context nun? Ayaw nila mag-date ng bi people because?
Of trauma, ganyan. Kasi assholes, ganyan. Yung na-encounter nilang bi people ay masasama ang ugali, ganun.
Yeah, the negative stereotypes yung na-encounter nila.
Oh, okay. I think it's important that we don't generalize like the bi community like as a whole. It's a sad thing to experience. But again, hindi exclusive yung mga ganong traits to the bi community only, and we should start to debunk that. Kasi kapag mas ine-encourage natin yung idea na bi people are a-holes or they're rude or they're not capable of love or they're cheaters, then mas na-encourage lang natin na totoo yung mga ganong stereotypes about bisexual people.
Thank you. So we have a question coming from the YouTube section. It's also related to the previous question. It's from I Could Fly Home. What's your take on people rejecting to date bisexual people for being bisexual?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Okay, so the I Could Fly Home asked, what's your take on people rejecting to date bisexual people just for their sexual orientation or for being bisexual?
Not bisexual people rejecting to date bi people, tama ba?
It's more of different sexual orientations when they encounter a bi person. Yeah.
Parang ilag agad sila kasi bi.
Like for example, I'm a lesbian woman, so I don't want to date a bi person.
Yeah.
Again, another thing, siguro nag-root yung thinking na yon sa negative stereotypes and misconceptions about bisexuality in general. So, maganda nga na ituloy natin yung pagde-debunk and pag-educate na those stereotypes aren't real, those stereotypes aren't bisexuality. Ayun. Kasi feeling ko malaking factor na parang ingrained na sa sarili nila na bi people are those stereotypes where in fact they're not. Ayun.
Thank you. So may tanong dito from Twitter at RGE_canlas. Kapag hindi ka na ina-identify ang self ko as bisexual or gay, pwede kong sabihin na I'm genderqueer?
It will usually depend on you. If you're comfortable to identifying yourself as genderqueer and you don't feel like identifying with any of the other labels, then it's entirely up to you. Again, no one can dictate that for you. So kung komportable ka and you feel happy about it, you feel like you belong using that label, then you're good to go.
Ayan, meron po tayong question sa YouTube live stream, ay live chat. Sabi niya, what should a past biphobic do to prove that they are not biphobic anymore?
To prove that they're not biphobic anymore.
Yeah.
They can make an effort, I guess, um or kapag wait, hold on. Kasi yung proseso ng pagwawasto sa sarili, ano siya mahaba siyang proseso. So, it's not really like hindi mo pwedeng i-prove yon sa sarili mo. It's more on kailangan mo siyang i-prove to the people na maaring nag-cause ka ng harm before. So, you don't have to prove anything about yourself na, okay, I'm not biphobic anymore. You don't get to do that. Yung pagwawasto mo ay kailangan addressed siya to the people na maaring nasaktan mo from before dahil sa biphobic remarks.
Okay. So, Miss Miggy, do we have other questions?
Naghahanap pa ako sa Twitter para
Go. Yes. More questions, guys. So may ano dito from Lance Lucas from the Zoom group chat. To break the concept of Sogie and proposes everyone rights, including the heterosexual. Do the Sogie encompass of the rights of the heterosexuals then, diba? Because they think that that sometimes the bill is only for the LGBT people. How would you explain that to a straight person that their rights are also included?
Ayun. Maybe try to explain na even as heterosexual people or straight people, they do have Sogie. Kung babalikan natin kanina, under sila nung identity, diba? Under sila nung orientation, which is heterosexual. So with that, hindi siya, alam mo yon, special treatment to the LGBTQ plus people only. Kasi even the straight people identifies themselves, meron silang expression, meron silang sexual orientation, which is heterosexual. So, siya, hindi siya, like, kasi yung palagi kong nababasa tungkol sa Sogie Equality Bill is that masyado kayong maraming hinihingi, ganyan, na gusto niyang special treatment. Where in fact, we're just, asking for basic human rights. And it's inclusive of everyone, even the heterosexual community.
Eto, meron akong nakita sa Twitter from user @sanaya. Sabi niya, kapag confused ka, who do you talk to? Someone who studied sexuality or a therapist or both?
Confused about like my sexuality.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it will really depend on like the availability or if you have the means to go to a gender specialist na therapist, or if you have the means to go to like a friend who knows about this stuff or a person who studies about this stuff. So I guess it will really depend on kung sino yung pinaka madali mong lapitan at kausapin about it, at kung kanino ka komportable i-open yung confusion na nararamdaman mo.
Okay. So we're looking for more questions, you guys. If you have any questions,
meron akong nakitang biro na joke. Sabi niya, Miss Kristine, will you marry me?
Hindi pa single.
Sana all.
Grabe.
Naghahanap pa ako.
Sige lang.
Sir, looking for last two questions.
Last two questions para makapagpahinga na si Miss Kristine.
Sige lang.
But we're really grateful for this very educational talk with you, Miss Kristine. And of course, UPLB Babaylan. Thank you guys so much for participating in our event.
Ayan, thank you then to everyone who attended.
Okay, so one here, at Lance Lucas asked if he can be unmuted and ask. Yes,
Sure
go ahead.
thing.
Go.
Go.
Hi, Kristine. I'm just wondering, I want to pick your brain on this. Like, let's say we're thrown in the 50 years from now. How would you see the movement of Soji? Or what would be your goal or dream of how Soji would look like? Kasi I'm asking this question because I remember the goal of Thais before with Pride. She wanted to say that we just want it to become a celebration wherein we no longer celebrate because we're in a march or celebrating because of love, out of the purity of love. So for you, what would be your dream for Soji? Or
It's
how
a
do you see it from
very
the future?
pageantry,
I
but
know.
I would like to answer that. If I'm being really idealistic and hopeful about this, of course, gusto ko na, like, siguro nga lesser than 50 years, sana mag-progress yung Soji Equality Bill. Sana hindi na tayo mag-antay ng ganon katagal just for this to, be passed and just for us to have or enjoy our basic human rights. So, ayun. But ideally speaking, and like as a hopeful na person, I really want this Soji Equality Bill. And alam ko na hindi lang naman ako. Of course, lahat naman tayo gusto ng genuine gender liberation. And one step for us to have that is, of course, may bill o may law na magpoprotekta sa ating lahat.
Thank you, Miss
Meron akong nabasa sa Twitter, sabi niya lang, how would you know your sexual expression kung napaka-homophobic ng society natin? True.
One thing is for sure, do not let them dictate your expression. It's so hard to express yourselves when you are surrounded by people na homophobic, to be honest. It's so hard to be true to yourself. So I suggest na maybe have like a circle or a group of friends, a support group that you can be that you can truly express yourselves, that you can be yourself. Ganun. Because it's really hard actually. Like hindi ko rin naman pwede sabihin na just express yourselves even if you're around people na homophobic, kasi that's a pretty traumatic experience and it's a hard thing to do. Ayun. So, one thing na I think we can do, for example, etong fans club, since you organize like a Soji talk, a bisexuality talk, it's good na you find comfort or safety to express yourself within this group of people.
Thank you, Miss Kristine.
Thank you. Magtatanong lang kami sa mga nasa Zoom. If meron gustong magtanong ng question, magsabi lang kayo, tapos pwede nyo sabihin out loud.
So I'm going to be reading questions. Last two questions from YouTube. The first question, the second to the last question, is from Kiko Tomato, which is, what is the basic component ng Soji workshop?
Oh, Soji workshop.
Yeah.
Like yung discussion sa org namin, actually this is the base. This is the first ED na tinitake ng mga members namin. Then I think we have seven educational discussions, like core educational discussions. So if you want, we actually i-announce na rin pala na magkakaroon kasi kami ng open ED sometime in Feb or March. So, ayun, I will take this opportunity to please attend those EDs kasi yung mga EED ay yung basic components ng ng Soji discussion. Ayun.
So the last question from YouTube is coming from Jojo Kim. Okay, he or she or they said, if a bisexual person says they're half straight or half gay, would it be counted as offensive or harmful given that this came from a bisexual person?
That's kasi 'di ba sinabi natin kanina na isa sa mga misconceptions ng sa pagiging bi is yung they're half straight or like they're 50. Hindi, like, to be honest, hindi rin naman bago yung konsepto ng internal na biphobia or internal na homophobia in general. Maybe if you will encounter a person who will say that, baka pwede nating i-educate na actually no, it's not the same for everyone. Actually, hindi hindi generalize dapat na ang mga bi people, they feel like 50 sila, 50-50 sila, ganyan. They're 50% gay and 50% straight. Yan, because that's pretty harmful actually.
Eto, last question na from Twitter. Offensive ba yung paglipat from J? Offensive ba yung paglipat ng sexual orientation to one another? From one to another?
No, I don't think so. As long as you won't harm anyone and that you're doing that for the own comfort of yourself, for your own like gender liberation, para mas makilala mo yung sarili mo, it's not offensive.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Kristine. Okay, so I guess that concludes the second part of our talk for today. I hope that you guys have learned something from the answers that Miss Kristine gave to your questions. So we will be moving on to the award of certificate and token to the speaker, Miss Miggy.
Hey, actually, can I just add something? Na if
Sure.
may mga magkakama pa na questions or anything, open naman yung DMs ng UPLB Babaylan to answer your
Yes.
queries or your additional questions. So, okay lang naman. Don't be shy.
Kanina pa ako nagsasalita, nakamute pala ako.
My gosh.
Ayun. Ayan. So, on behalf of PND support team, Raincoats, Adrianna Nation, Iana's Cookies, MacaPhillip OFC, Gameboys PH, Thirdwheels OFC, and BettyLynn OFC, we would like to thank you, Miss Kristine San Agustin, and the UPLB Babaylan for accepting our invitation and for enlightening us more about Sogie and bisexuality.
Yes. Thank you for your invaluable participation, guys, in the Sogie Talk Spectrum Check, the Vanishing B in LGBTQIA plus, held on January 17, 2021. So we would like to award this certificate and token of appreciation to Miss Kristine San Agustin. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Salamat.
Nawala yung nawala yung clap.
Oo nga eh.
Na lang.
Tapos,
Okay.
Miss Kristine,
Ayan.
nagtatanong if we can get the copy ng slides.
Sure thing. Sure. I can send like a link containing some materials and readings.
Tapos kami
Go
na
na.
bahala mag-disseminate.
Sure, go on.
Ayan. We would also like to thank all the participants here in the Zoom teleconference and also to the people who tuned in on the YouTube live stream.
Thank you guys so much for coming, and I hope that we have learned a lot. We have learned something from our tonight's talk. So these are your hosts, Matsui Burina from MacaPhillip Official Fan Club.
And I'm Miggy saying have a great
night, you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Salamat.
Thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Thank you, Miss
Thank
Kristine.
you, everyone. Thank you.
And live.
Live na ba?
And live. And
Thank
live.
you po. Thank you everyone ha.